Good day, ladies and gentlemen, I just finished The End and the Dead Volume 2 and it's okay. The novel starts off exactly where the last one ended and continues most of the storylines found in part 1. The companions are on their way to talk to Big E, Ferris's spirit has a chat with Hogboy, Basilio Foe and pals are building a bioweapon, Vulcan and Malkador try to maintain the Golden Throne, Keeler leads the faithful to the Promised Land, Elder and Drakari watch a Harlequinade, Sigismund is a badass with more plot armor than a full tank Rammus, Araman goes looking for a book, Erebus says hi to his buddies, yet none are happy to see him, Abaddon starts to relate more and more to Perturabo, Valdor kills some shit, and then some more, Katsuhiro makes a cameo and the baby does too, Forks and Corswain disagree about mountain property rights, Dorn talks to a wall, Lecorifus still has an itchy foot, Space and Time collapse, Loken and Samus finally get a reunion, lots of random stuff and things I forgot, Big E does, well, that would be a spoiler, Horus also does some, and that also would be a spoiler, and of course Sanguinius, well, I think we all know what he does in this book. However, almost none of this happens in the first half of the book. Instead, we spend the first 150 pages establishing that indeed, space and time are a bit fucky right now. We get about like 20 scenes where characters go, oh hey, that isn't supposed to be here, which just repeats ad infinitum. Now, we can talk all day about whether this is a cool feature or just a tool to cover up the Swiss cheese that is early Horus Heresy lore, but we can all agree, I think, that the first part of this novel contains so much repetitive, useless segments that it starts to become a drag. In a similar vein, we also see the return of Abnett's cringy End and the Death, Morbius shenanigans. Very frequently, and sometimes completely out of left field, characters start talking about this or putting it into their sentences with very little logic as to why. During the later half of the novel, this becomes a bit less obnoxious, but at the start it is really cringe-inducing. And I wish that I could end the death the negatives here, but I also have to comment on how much of a filler book this is at times. Like I said, the first half of the book doesn't really go anywhere and doesn't show anything that wasn't already in book 1, but even during the second half there are so many plots that don't really change from where they were in part 1. From Valdor to Basilio Foe and from Vulcan to Corswain, plenty of pages are spent on them, but at the end of the day, nothing meaningful really changed. Not to mention that some of the storylines that do progress just fizzle out and go basically nowhere. As a result, a lot of these parts just feel so unnecessary, almost as if Abnett is getting paid by the page and has to fluff up the book to reach 600 pages. That being said, some plotlines do wrap up in a fun way. I for an example quite like the entire Dark King arc, a story that ties the Cabal, Olanius, Erebus, Horus, Big E, etc. all together in a very satisfying way, while also trying to make a bit more sense of why the final battle went as it did. As you might understand, I won't go too deep into these though, to avoid spoilers. One other thing I do really want to highlight is how well Abnett handles characters in this novel. There are almost a billion of them, but each of them talk and act in a very distinct manner. On a faction level, he manages to make every Space Marine chapter, every human group, and alien assemble feel vastly different. While on an individual level, he perfectly manages to capture the essence of what makes up each character. Because of this, every character is portrayed in a fun, lore-accurate way that shares continuity with appearances in previous or future works. I also want to say that for all the filler and shitty parts in the first half of the book, the second half of the book actually contains some really fun stories. While trying to avoid major spoilers, things like Araman's book club, Abaddon's meetup with his favorite Chaos Space Marine, Ferris's TED Talk, the Perpetual's quest, or the final stand in the Imperial Palace. There are a lot of really cool and interesting things going on, that while not very important for the Horus vs the Emperor storyline, were still very fun to read. But the real reason why you all want to read this book, of course, is the fight between our glorious angel and devil incarnate Horus. So was that part any good? Fuck yes! Sanguinius vs Horus was everything I hoped for and more. From Sanguinius' perspective, it is an heroic Dark Souls boss fight, with Sanguinius feeling real fear for the first time in his life, and him having to overcome not just that, but also the fact that he might be about to fight the final fight of his life. The psychological aspect is excellent, and the combat itself is epic as fuck. From Horus' perspective, we meanwhile get a Homelander-like internal monologue. Horus at this point has become a chaos-infused monster to whom Sanguinius poses little threat. But he still believes his beloved brother, his best friend, will join him on the side of chaos. After all, who could deny him, Horus, the only thing that really matters in this galaxy. Written in the second person, this very personal and sad perspective provides great contrast with the boss fight that is going on in Sanguinius' mind. And of course, the conclusion is as gut-wrenching as we all expected and secretly hoped for. The book then also closes off the storyline of Zephon and Emir with some very ironic lines, taunting the reader about the fact that they don't know what has happened yet. But in the end and the death, I am giving this one 4 to 5 stars, and that might even be a bit generous. The first part of this novel is pure filler, and the second part is also heavily padded with bloated fluff. There is some cringe-inducing wordplay, and some storylines really don't go anywhere. Meanwhile, plots like the Dark King, Dorn's desert adventure, and Loken's showdown with Samus I think will be highly divisive. Some people will love him, but others will really dislike him. For all of these flaws, however, the character work and writing style of Abnett really carry the bulk of this novel. There are a whole bunch of epic, sad and interesting scenes mixed in between that make the book very fun to read, at least once you get past the soggy first half. I would have given this 3 stars I think, but the showdown between Horus and Sanguinius was so damn cool that I'm going with 4. This is for sure a must read for Blood Angel fans. But anyways, that's all I got for you today. If you like the content, please consider subscribing or joining us on Patreon. Otherwise, have a nice evening and post an F in chat for Glorious Hogboy.